Where is Tokai? Oh, I see. Yes.
Tokaji.
Tokaji. It's real. Keep it real, wine people. We're talking about Hungary today, which is essentially just the region of Tokai.
At least we're just looking at the region of Tokai.
Yeah. So here, that is the region we circled. Here we're going to have a moderate climate, and the hillside slopes of this region, with southerly aspect, produce the best grapes. A very, very common theme. You have two rivers, the Tiza and the Bodrog rivers, and they actually encourage noble rot development, which is why we'll see a lot of sweet wine production here in the region of Tokai.
So we're known for our sweet wine styles in Tokai, but we also have some dry wine production, which are bottled in typical 750 milliliter bottles, while our sweet wines are generally going to be in 500 milliliter bottles to make that distinction because the styles are so drastically different. Producers definitely have multiple styles of wine that they have options to make depending on the level of noble rot development. But we can talk about sweet wine in a second. We're going to start talking about dry wine, which is becoming more popular. This is generally going to be wine without noble rot, but we will see some styles that do incorporate noble rot for the characteristic of flavors, however, not for the characteristic of sweetness and style. Style can be a little bit on the more simpler side with more unoaked characters, or it can be on the sort of opposite end of the spectrum, a little bit more concentrated, a little bit oakier, and a little bit fuller as well. Generally, we're seeing ferment production for dry wines, not a lot of our other varieties that we'll get into in a little bit. But we have a style of wine using different levels of noble rot grapes. This is Tokai Scramund.
Where's the siege? Mad Mordini?
Mad Mordini is what we're calling it. So wine made from Strasmordini picked grapes is either going to be in a dry style or a sweet style, depending on the level of botrytis or noble rot on the grapes. And we're going to have a 6-month minimum aging requirement in a cask for these wines. Some winemakers are going to choose to go a little bit harder on that, depending on their style. But in general, our dry wines are going to be left not all the way full so that a biological floor is able to develop, providing more biological quality similar to like a Pinot Sherry, while sweeter wines aren't going to have the floor development, and they're going to be sort of more like an Oloroso style, where they're a little bit more oxidative.
All right. We have to talk about sweet wine laws. There are two kinds of laws here. There are the traditional laws and the 2013 laws. Tokai has recently submitted a revision of their wine laws to the EU legislation. This is actually currently under review, so we figured that it'd be important to include these because following the 2013 vintage, all Tokai wines would have to follow these wine rules. Traditional rules say that you have to have a minimum of 60 grams per liter of residual sugar in that bottle. You can go higher, you can't go lower, but this is called, they're labeled as 3 to 6 petunias. It's a scale, petunias meaning mats of dried grapes that are within the bottle. Wines under the traditional laws must be aged for a minimum of 24 months in oak, and can only be released in the January after the 4th year of harvest, number 4. And the sweetest wines under traditional laws are called Azu Essentia, which is 180 liters, grams per liter of residual sugar. So the 2013 laws that they have submitted to the EU legislators raises the minimum sugar level to 120 grams per liters. On the old scale, this would be considered 5 petunias. Wines with lower levels of sugar than 120 grams per liter must be labeled late harvest or Tokai Strasmordini, depending on how the wine itself is made. They have gotten rid of the term Azu Essentia, and now Tokai Azu has lower aging requirements, meaning 18 months in oak as opposed to the 24. and can be released in the January of the 3rd year after harvest. So not the 4th, 3rd.
Always important to keep up with our emerging wine laws as we continue our study because they're always changing. But we'll sort of circle back and talk about just grape varietals and winemaking. The most common one we're going to see is ferment for our production of Tokaji wines in a sweeter style, very heavily susceptible to botrytis in this area, which is why we're seeing it be the most widely planted grape. But there are some other grape varieties that have other characteristics to add to, say, a ferment that may round it out or provide more characteristics that might be seen as more favorable. So we'll see blending occur depending on the winemaker's style. Ferment, going back, is going to be a more concentrated grape with higher acid. And young wines generally are a little bit lighter in their fruity characteristics. More appley is a good marker for them. And more developed wines are going to be on that more tertiary nuts and honey sort of characteristic. And our premium quality wines are going to be harvested late, and they are going to have a lot of botrytis on them for sweet wine production. Another grape that's native to the area, Level, which is a late ripener and is used to add a little bit of perfume to a blend. Then we also have Sarga Muscalte, which is the Hungarian version of Muscat Blanc, a Petit Grand, which is used for its aromatic qualities. Tokai.
She ferment on my ferment till I Tokai.
Mm.
Keep it real, people.
Unfortunately.